Welcome to Activation Nation Season 6. I'm Mindy Trimble, Manager of Consultant Training. Each episode will bring you inspiring stories, expert insights, and strategies to aid you on your path in business and personal growth. This season will have top performers and thought leaders sharing their journeys and actionable tips to help you fuel your momentum. Today's episode is a special one. It features a conversation with our Chief Sales Officer, Kristen Cunningham, and our keynote speaker from Global Convention, Kellie Gerardi. Kellie is an astronaut, mom, bioastronautics researcher, a popular science communicator who serves as the Director of Human Spaceflight Operations for the International Institute for Astronautical Sciences. She has over 1 million followers on Instagram and recently won the 2025 People Choice Webby Award. So, without further ado, here's Kristen and Kellie.
Kellie, so excited to be here with you. As you know, I was telling you, I've been a fan for a very long time, watching your journey, watching everything that you've been able to do personally, professionally with your family. I'm excited for you to be here and talk to our Activation Nation family. This year, as you know, we're focusing on drive. And tell me a little bit about the drive you have had to get to where you are today. Like, how did this all start for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
I think my biggest challenge in this conversation is going to be not peppering the entire thing with space and rocket puns.
No, do it.
I'm gonna hold back.
We have a million questions about that too. So slip them in.
Yeah. So look, I mean, for me, motivation has been such a core part of my story. I grew up in Jupiter, Florida, which is very on brand for someone with my particular passions in life. But growing up with these, what I'll say is like front row seats to the final frontier from the space coast of Florida, and being able to see this future where human beings are leaving the planet to live and work in space, I knew from a really early age that I wanted to be a part of that. So that was truly my drive. That was my North Star. That was my goal. And as I got older and I began to kind of put some of those puzzle pieces into place about how I could actually create that reality, I really got to learn about the emergence of this commercial space industry. And it really captivated my heart, my mind, my imagination. And my goal was to help blow open the door to commercial human spaceflight for the next generation of scientists to use space as a laboratory to benefit humanity.
I love how clearly you can articulate like what the goal was. Like, that is so powerful. So we, as I told you, we're talking a lot about drive this year. And so I'm going to kind of talk to you a little bit about things in the framework of vehicles, fuel, engine, and the big race. So starting off with vehicles. Sometimes vehicles have challenges, right? Along the way, hopefully never in space. Like, that's not a vehicle you want to be on with a challenge.
I don't claim that energy.
Right?
No, just
kidding. For sure. But as you were going through your career and your journey of everything, my guess is you did face some challenges.
Absolutely.
At times. Like, what was a point in your journey that you were like, oh my gosh, this is hard? And how did you get through it?
Yeah. The reality is that it was almost every point up until the point that I learned that I was actually going to have an opportunity to go to space. My path to space was unconventional insofar as it literally did not exist as an option until my research institute sent me. Of course, NASA existed if you were going the former fighter pilot route as a government employee, and space tourism was beginning to exist if you were wealthy. But to send a researcher, a civilian payload specialist on a commercial spacecraft, that just did not exist as an option until my research institute sent me. And so I think a lot of people who are much better with words than I am have coined this phrase like the messy middle of your career. And I relate so much to that because for me, it really felt like there were decades where it felt like nothing happened. And then you get these moments and you earn these moments where it feels like decades happened. And that was the case for me. And I think the navigation through that messy middle where you don't exactly know what the next step is going to be or should be or where it's going to get you. But what you do have, hopefully, is this North Star that you can continue following and this sense of both humility that the road is hard and challenging and it's going to require a lot of work, but also the confidence to know that if you stick with it for long enough, why not you getting there to the other side of it? And so for me, it was that contradiction of humility and confidence that I think really helped me stay the course.
I love that. I also love the North Star comment.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I caught that.
We're
I caught
keeping
that.
tally.
Yeah.
You got a couple in there.
We're one on our space words, but you talk about kind of that opportunity, and so the people listening to this, they have this opportunity in front of them that is bigger probably than they realize. And for a lot of people, even just saying yes to that opportunity was probably scary. What was that like for you? And, we see all the time where people are like not confident enough in themselves to grab it. But talk to me a little bit about the importance of just if an opportunity is in front of you, like take it.
1,000%. It's, I was the first in my family to go to college. And I have to say that what my parents gave me was so invaluable. And it was this mindset of, of course, any room you walk into, you may not be, the smartest person in the room, but you can certainly be among the most hardworking. And your reputation is something entirely in your control. You can design it. You can put in the work to make it true. And they gave me the ability to cultivate this mindset of like, why not me? Like, not the ego of I deserve it. I'm going to get there because I deserve it.
Yeah,
absolutely. But the quiet confidence to believe, okay, well, if I work hard enough for long enough, why not me? And I think that taught me that you can rewrite your own limits. You can adjust the limiter on your own imagination, and you can dream more boldly, and you can dream out loud. I think that's the part where a lot of people hold back and pull back, is this fear of sort of putting their dreams out there because failure can seem so scary and so public and, so shameful perhaps to fail visibly in front of family or friends, whether it's a goal related to your personal health or it's a goal related to your family or a goal related to your career, the sense of what if I don't achieve it? But it's like, what if you do? And I think being able to toggle over to the other side of like, what if we do achieve it? And what if we give everyone in our lives and our communities a chance to cheer us on along the way? Like that has been one of the most beautiful parts. And I've also drawn resilience and motivation during, the tougher times when other people are like, hey, you got this. This is just a stumbling block. You can still do it.
It's so fascinating to me as I imagine, first off, I can never imagine, like my mind is blown just thinking of you have been in space. So I'm trying to wrap my head.
Mine too.
Okay, well, I'm trying to wrap my head around that. But like the preparation, I mean, you spent a lot of time preparing to be ready for that opportunity versus the amount of time that maybe you were actually in space. Like talk to me about the difference between the prep work leading up to it and what was so important about the prep work and the amount of time versus the mission itself.
Absolutely. It was everything. I mean, my entire career was in preparation for this moment. And I will say it wasn't always in preparation for that exact moment. It still would have been a worthy and valid career, even if I had never gotten the opportunity to carry out that research in space. But I think because my North Star was so clear and I just had that clarity of vision that this is the field I want to contribute to, this is the impact that I want to have, being able to put all of that work in. So for me, it looked like a decade spent conducting bioastronautics research here on Earth in microgravity. So we fly with the National Research Council of Canada as one of our partners at my research institute, the International Institute for Astronautical Sciences. And what that looks like is getting in a small aircraft which is designed to give you these brief bursts of microgravity or weightlessness. And the way that they do that is the airplane flies almost in this roller coaster profile where it goes up, it free falls, and then it pulls up again over and over and over again. That's where you get the nickname, the vomit comet.
Oh, and I never knew that.
So
okay.
Another
Be
fun
telling my
fact.
kids that.
And so during those periods of free fall in the aircraft, you get about 12 to 20 seconds of microgravity. And that's where we conduct a lot of our research. We mature our technologies, we practice. And for me, I've flown over 150 parabolas in my research career. So that was so important to be able to make sure that I felt confident and comfortable and safe maneuvering in microgravity because it's not a natural sensation for the human body.
I can imagine. I mean, I can't, but
I would say, imagine yourself lying like almost in starfish position on your back in a swimming pool, and then try to subtract the sensation of water. And that's a little bit what it's like. It's serene.
Can you like say that one more? Everybody, like, I want you to say that one more time. Listen to how she told me to describe. So you're a starfish.
I haven't quite refined how I want people.
Perfect.
Everyone will have to tell me if this is, relatable to envision. But I would try to describe it to friends and family as, imagine you're in your swimming pool or in a swimming pool somewhere and you're laying on your back like in a starfish position. And if you can just try to subtract the sensation of water beneath you, that is sort of the serenity of what weightlessness feels like, to be floating and to, not have those kind of acceleration forces imparted on you. And it's really such a wonderful, novel, interesting thing and sensation, but it takes a lot of getting used to. So, for me, I feel so grateful that I had this decade of work in microgravity to fall back on, because it allowed me to have the muscle memory to make the most critical use of my spaceflight and get the data we need. I mean, that was my Super Bowl moment from a research institute is, you have one shot. I didn't know if I would ever get another chance to get this data or go back in space, if there would be a follow-up mission.
Yeah, not easy just to go back to space.
Right. I mean, and it was a major moment. Just to contextualize this number of humans who have ever flown to space and this moment in spaceflight. When I flew in 2023, I was the 677th human to fly to space, and I was the 90th woman to fly to space in all of humanity's history of a spacefaring species. So really, we are just in the very early nascent years of advancing our footprint beyond Earth. And so there's such a deep humility that comes with that too, of that opportunity, and just a preciousness. And I really felt so grateful that I had so much training to fall back on to do right by that moment and by that opportunity. So yeah, for me, that was my training when it came time getting closer to the flight, and we were really preparing and training specifically for the flight and not just for the research. We joked that we were upping our dose of vitamin G. Okay. So it was a lot of high G aerobatic flights and a lot of zero G parabolic flights that helped us validate sensor placement, helped us make sure that, we were able to move in a really tight choreography.
Yeah, it's one thing to know the material, but then to have to like figure out how to maneuver and move around it even.
Totally and then different. To keep your head about you in a situation like that. I'll say I felt so prepared from the science side for my spaceflight. I thought I knew exactly what to expect. I mean, I could do it with my eyes closed. In fact, I practiced operating my experiments without visual, without audio, just to make sure that in an off-nominal situation where something was going wrong, I was able to safely restow it before re-entry, and it didn't suddenly become a hazard in the cabin. So we practiced every contingency. I felt prepared for everything. The one thing I immediately realized I could have never prepared for was just the emotional aspect. And I don't know that I paid enough time before my flight, really investing in how to prepare my mind and my heart and my soul really for what was truly a transformative experience of seeing planet Earth with my own eyes.
I cannot even imagine. I'm hearing like a common thread through everything that you're responding to. And it's kind of that like self-motivation, that self-vision, like holding yourself accountable. Our Activation Nation family, they're all business owners, and, looking at the fuel of their business, it's really themselves. It's their conviction. It's their belief. Like, what would your advice be to them who put yourself in their shoes? They're starting a business. They're scared, or maybe they're excited. They're nervous, and those emotions kind of come and go by day. What would your advice be to someone to just keep thinking big, keep going back to that vision that you were talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fine line, towing the line of delusion in life with the dreams of grandeur. But I really feel like, there is something to that cliche of aim for the moon, you'll land among the stars.
We're at 3 space reference.
Oh, yeah, I know. I can't stop. No, I really can't.
It's amazing.
It's beyond my control at this point. But I do think there is something to that. Like where you set your sights, directionally has such an impact on where you arrive. And I've really tried to take that to heart. But, for others who are suffering from either self-doubt or holding themselves back, I do think it's really important to just remember that if you want people to make bets on you in life, you need to set the example and make the biggest bet on yourself. I mean, you are going to be your own biggest advocate, champion, motivator, cheerleader, coach. It's all this, like you said, it's like this intrinsic motivation that you have to draw from. And luckily, it is a renewable energy source.
That's
you can
true.
keep tapping in.
It's free too.
Yeah. And I want to be like thoughtful as someone who has so many multitudes that I like to really give time to in my life and energy to. I do also think it's important to recognize different seasons of life. Like there are times in my life where I wouldn't say my foot has been so fully on that gas pedal on the highway. Like there have been, times or months where I've needed to get off the highway and take the scenic road for a few exits, where I needed to prioritize internal growth over external growth, that's visible, but is felt. And so I think those are important things to be reflective about too, and knowing what you need and when, and what is energizing to you versus what is draining to you, and be able to balance that formula.
Yes, no, that goes so well into my next question, because again, Activation Nation, they are in a place where, once they feel good about something and they're in a good mindset, maybe one person can say something negative and can make them question again. How have you been able to create those I'm guessing people have told you like, that's too big of a dream, or are you crazy, or you're never like, are you kidding me? You want to do that? How have you put up those like mental barriers to just focus?
I will say so much of my skin has probably been toughened by being so public on social media.
That would do it. Yeah.
I think, I don't know if that's exposure therapy or what it is.
It can be kind of mean on social.
It can be. And I will say I've been very lucky to sort of like be met with the same positive energy I try to put out on social media, and I've cultivated and pruned, I would say, into a very like supportive community. But yeah, I think you just have to remember that you don't need to take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from. And being able to parse those things is a really healthy way to look at it, because everyone's going to have an opinion. But I think if you can sort of discern, is this opinion coming from a place of wanting the best for me, wanting me to be better, wanting what I want for myself? If the answer to that is no, then I don't think that that's necessarily criticism you really need to be metabolizing.
Oh my gosh, you like said that so simply. Like,
yeah,
I've wasted a lot of time worrying about stuff like that.
I've spiraled. We all have, right? You get a comment, it gets in your head for whatever reason. You're in a sensitive or vulnerable place in the moment, and you see something that just bothers you. And for me, I've really had to, be able to look critically at both the comment and the person delivering the comment, and think to myself, would I be taking advice from this person? Are they speaking to me with my best intentions in mind? If the answer is no and no, then I need to, it's noise, it's not signal.
Yeah, you need to just mentally, I love that. So simple. Maybe easier said than done, but so like.
Yeah, easier said than done for sure, but maybe perhaps something helpful to try and keep in mind.
That. No, I love that. So the next thing I want to talk about, we're kind of shifting into the engine of things.
I like what you did there.
Yeah, if you couldn't see that, but I pretended to like shift. So teamwork, these our Activation Nation family, they are building teams, they're building businesses. Like, talk to me a little bit about how teamwork has been such an important thing in your life, and how you have worked to be a good part of a good team and a good teammate yourself.
Yeah. Gosh, when I think about these themes, I swear I don't only speak in like tired cliches, but so many come to mind because I've found them to ring so true in my own life. One of them being, you can go faster alone, but you go farther together.
I love that.
It is so true. And I see that play out in so many aspects of my career and my life. I lean so heavily on my teammates, and I'm overjoyed and grateful that on this next mission, I get to fly with two of my most esteemed colleagues. I mean, they're extraordinary women. And I just think it's so special that we get to work together, experience together, learn from each other, build each other up, push each other harder, and, make each other better. And I think so much of what I've taken joy from in my adult life has also been personally, just, as a woman in her late 30s, is, my female friendships are incredibly important to me. I happen to be friends with a number of extremely ambitious, high-achieving women. And I think, early in life, sometimes we are given this, mental model of competition or, perceiving that someone else's success might take away from yours, or that there's not room for everybody. And I've really been so grateful that I have not, fallen into the trap of that mindset, and nor have my friends, because competition really does happen at the bottom, and we've been able to have celebration at the top. I mean, I consider them my personal advisory board. And
I love that.
To be able to cheer each other on, to support each other, to, create opportunities for each other, and to know that there are other people who are speaking your name in rooms that you're not in for opportunities that you may not be aware of, like that's everything. So not cultivating that and going out of your way to sort of build in isolation, I think cuts off so much serendipity and opportunity if you're looking at it from a purely sort of, what is the benefit of collaboration. But it's also just so personally rewarding to be able to experience these things along people who are cheering for you and for each other.
Well, and I was thinking about our business, and you can't get to like our top rank in this company without a team of people like working with you. And I was thinking about your just professional life. You're not getting into space alone.
No.
Like, this is not like a one person driving situation.
Absolutely
like
not.
There's a team that is required. It's not even like you can choose not. You have to have a team.
It's an entire team. On my mission patch from my research institute for my first space flight, even though I was the only payload specialist flying on that particular mission from my research institute, that patch has all of the names of my science team on it. All of us are on it because we were all equal contributors to the success of that mission. It could not have happened without each one of us. And I think that's just such an important thing to carry forward and to know to be true.
I love that. So the next thing we're going to talk about is kind of the big race, again, our drive theme, right? So I want to go back to like maybe young Kellie, like elementary school, big dreams. What would be your advice to her, like knowing kind of the destination or where you got in your career, in your personal life, everything? What advice would you give yourself kind of at that starting line if you could go back and talk to yourself, as a kid?
Yeah. I think about this a lot because there were so many years where I don't think anyone could tell me anything, my mom especially. And so I feel
like all good moms go through that phase. At least that's what I'm telling myself with kids.
I'm fearing it a little as my daughter gets older. But I think about how when I was young, I had this sort of I had no limiter on my imagination. And I think being able to tap back into that as an adult and to be able to just like open the aperture of my own imagination is so freeing and so exciting and energizing. And I would just want to say, like, don't lose that. Keep thinking with that, wild imagination, and then aim for it and put in the work and, keep going. And I think the other thing that I get reminded of so often is, I really felt so often that I was facing so many locked doors. There was all it hasn't been done this way before. That can't happen that way. That's not how this is done. And to be able to reframe those things in your career to, okay, what I'm hearing you say is it hasn't been done this way yet.
I love
or
that.
what I'm hearing you say is there's an opportunity to have a first, and to be able to just sort of like hold the problem up and inspect it from another angle and think creatively and just not look at a locked door and say, okay, that's it, but instead be like, okay, well, are there side doors? Are there detours? Are there trap doors? I don't know, being able to just think more creatively and more resiliently, I think is something that's just really important, that children are so wonderful at and persistent about when they have a goal in mind, and to be able to kind of carry that through.
Yeah, I love that. Was there ever like a defining moment, like looking back, that you really remember, like maybe you got to one of those locked doors or you had somebody like questioning? Was there ever kind of that moment that you had to kind of go back to that younger Kellie and just say, hey, go for this?
There were years of them. Like the only reason I'm kind of pausing to think is because there's not one specific one that comes to mind. I'm someone who 15 years ago was ending like panel discussions with like, it's not, an if, it's a when, just having, and not from a place of ego, just from a place of like, I believe with all of my heart that directionally we are headed into a future where we will democratize access to space for the next generation of scientists. I believe that the engineers in this industry are going to create the next platform of vehicles that are going to be a part of opening up that access. And I believe so sincerely that the work that we're doing in microgravity is so important that it's going to lend itself to opportunities to further that research and advance that science. So it was never the ego of, oh, it'll be me because it should be me and I'm extraordinary somehow. It was much more, I believe all of these things to be true. That's why I'm in this industry. That's why I'm dedicating my career to it. And so I'm putting it out there that I believe it's a when and not an if. And so there was a lot of like doubt. And I think that's okay.
Yeah,
that's
normal.
fair. That's
human,
normal,
right?
Exactly. But to be able to hear that and say, okay, I hear you. I still think this is possible and I'm still going to keep working at it.
And how important when you did get to those locked doors, and when I'm like saying locked doors here, I'm thinking of our consultants, and the locked door for them is someone telling them no or someone questioning them. How important was it to go back to that vision of here's why I'm doing this, or here's where I'm going?
It's incredibly important. And I think about it in all aspects of life. Like, for me, the career has been one side, but I'm not, for me, it's like my personal life and my work life and it's my identity. It's all one. It's who I am. It's what I do in this world. And so I think about that same sort of flavor of resilience when I think about my personal life. Like when I think about my IVF journey and, 7 years of secondary infertility and, having to pursue IVF and then, having a very public pregnancy loss. And even through all of that, I didn't change my goal. I changed my protocol. It wasn't like, to me, that's a locked door. That's like, okay, this has been, almost a decade of trying towards this thing that you want more than anything in the world, and it is not happening. And it is the most physically, emotionally, financially challenging thing that you've been through. My answer to that wasn't, okay, this isn't meant for me. My answer to that was, okay, we need to go back to the drawing board, back in the war room, with my doctors, with my husband, with, figure out like, okay, let's change the protocol. Let's, hold up the problem, inspect it from another angle. And I apply that same mindset, I think, to my work as well. And just this belief that like, I don't accept that, the things that are in my heart as dreams are not meant for me. Yeah. I can accept that I can try and not ever make it. I could accept that because I'll know I left everything on the field. That I could accept. But what I couldn't accept is just saying, oh, it must not be meant for me. This is a sign that,
I didn't change my goal. I changed my protocol. I love that. So simple. But no, that's big. Well, I want to talk to you a little bit now about, obviously you've done amazing things. And, in our business, people will rank advance or they'll celebrate a big win. And we recognize them. In fact, we have a big recognition event tomorrow night where we celebrate. talk to me about that moment where maybe you were off Earth and you were looking behind you, just thinking, wow, I'm really up here. Like, there had to have been this like celebration, this almost spiritual, just, wow, I did it.
Yeah, to this day, it continues, and I'm sure it'll continue through my next mission, which is still, so surreal to think about the fact that I have an opportunity to go, do this again. But looking at planet Earth, and I'm so glad that there was video in the spacecraft cabin of this moment, because I can literally watch my breath catch in my throat. After I secured the science, after I got the data that we needed, when I was finally able to look out the window and really look at planet Earth, you just see my breath catch in my throat, and I was just emoting. I think I was just saying, oh my God, multiple times. And it was just this moment of like pure awe and gratitude and just profound humility to be looking at our home planet. And in that moment, like, we've all seen photos of the Earth and from much farther away, but the difference for me was experiencing Earth as a planet among other planets, and just knowing in that moment, like this cognitive dissonance of feeling both a part of it and being slightly outside of it, and in that moment not being on the same planet as my baby.
Oh,
it was everything. As a mother, as a woman, as a researcher, as a human, in that moment, it was just, it did feel spiritual. And on the ground, when we got back to Earth, I was in tears. I was so moved. And I of course, there was just like a large adrenaline crash, after reentry. And so I was just, there was a lot going on physically, emotionally. But for days and weeks and months after my spaceflight, that emotional saturation continued. I think that will be my mental screensaver until the day that I die. When I close my eyes, that view is what I see. And the thing I'm most looking forward to on my next mission, like, yes, of course, advancing the science and bringing, so many new research opportunities to the mission. But the thing I'm most looking forward to is watching my crewmates' faces and getting to see two of my closest friends experience that moment in their lives and get to watch them and live that with them. And it's just, you would think I have the words to describe it by now, and I just don't know that I'll ever do it justice. It is that special, and you just are reminded about how fragile life is, how unique the flame of life is that we have on this planet. You see that neon blue band of Earth's atmosphere, and you just recognize just the profundity of all of it. And so it is very special and emotional, and I feel very grateful to get to be a part of it.
How often do you go back there in your mind? Like, I'm thinking something that big, or again, to try to relate it to our business, like someone finally hits the goal that they wanted, that feeling on stage for you, that moment in space. How often mentally do you just go back there and remember that?
Very often. It's sort of become just part of my existence. There's so many aspects to being on the other side of a dream that were so interesting for me to unpack. After the flight, a few months after, I experienced some sadness too. For me, that was like, for so long, my defining life goal. And it was always, Kellie who wants to go do research in space one day. I didn't know how to be Kellie who just flew to space. It was it was so interesting to feel almost the sense of grief for a dream that had come true. But it became just this very beautiful part of my existence, where it's like a calm, I almost want to call it a sense of relief, to be on the other side of it, because I feel like I fulfilled what I was here to fulfill in this life, like the dream that I had in this life, and now I think the most beautiful thing is, like, I've learned that even once you're on the other side of what you think is your biggest dream, there are always higher stars to reach for. And that is what pulled me out of my funk of okay, now what?
Now what?
And so, that's, I think, the other beautiful thing about this being sort of the ability to dream big is this renewable, skill that you have. And there are always higher stars to reach for.
I love that. Well, one of the things that I know will resonate so well with our consultants and with me is just that you get to watch somebody else experience that. And I can't imagine experiencing that for myself, let alone watching someone that I care about get to experience that.
Yeah, and to be able to share that together, and have that bond of having experienced something that's so special, to each of you. It's just, I feel very grateful for it.
I love that. Well, Kellie, congratulations on everything that you've been able to accomplish and everything that you're going to accomplish. I end every podcast this way. Any advice? What's your last piece of advice that you would have for somebody who is either already started their business and maybe they're at a place where they're plateauing or they're getting back in it, or, they're maybe just making that decision? Any last advice for them?
I guess I would say, try not to be afraid to dream out loud. I think so much of the opportunity that has come my way in life has come as a, partial result of me being willing to put my goals out there publicly and let everyone either be a part of helping me reach them or step aside. It's pick one. And so I'm going in that direction, and I want everyone to know it. And you will find your people when you put yourself out there like that. There will be people who help create that momentum for you. And if you find people who are creating drag for you, that's important to know too. And you can, thoughtfully curate who you want to be surrounded by. And so I'm just a big advocate of putting your goals and your dreams out there quite publicly and letting others along for the ride with you.
That is so amazing. Well, Kellie, thank you so much for being with us. I will tell you, you are officially part of our LifeVantage family. You've got a whole group of people now in your corner cheering you on for what's next, and we appreciate the time that you took to spend it with us.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Activation Nation podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for future episodes and updates, and share with a friend or prospect that you think could benefit from today's conversation. Check the episode description for any links or disclaimers, and we'll see you next week for another episode.